Today's topic is going to be about cooling temperature pressures. So I had a customer that called me and was asking me if I had the exact operating temperature for his cooling system. So really, there's really not been any black and white that I can find on this. So I really wanted to try to give some insight of what really is going on with cooling systems on today's vehicles and newer vehicles. So on older vehicles, everything was mechanical. So I mean, you pretty much had guidelines. If it was a mechanical setting that said that this valve opened up at 20 psi, then that mechanical valve was set at 20 psi. Maybe some little variances, but when it was 20 psi, that valve was going to open. And if it closed, after receding, say, 19 psi, then that valve was going to close at 19 psi. It's a mechanical setting, so there's really no other, type of measuring for that, no other than having it calibrated to that specific number. So with using that, it's kind of the same thing with the cooling system, how the gauges work. So it was actually a setting. So when it says, hey, this needs to operate at 120 degrees, then yeah, that was the mechanical setting, and it kind of set at that 120 degree mark. So it's a little bit easier to kind of understand it a whole lot better. But with the newer systems, I don't really know when it exactly started, and it varies from every make, model, manufacturer, and even sometimes when it comes down to certain different calibrations. The operating temperature system has a temperature that's set and controlled by the computer on your vehicle. Whether that computer is directly, from the ECM, the engine control module, or they call it a powertrain control module, or if it goes through like a sub module, say like the ICM, instrument cluster module, or body control module, then it's got a written table that it follows. So whenever the cooling system is operating, then it's operating on on some parameters that are set based on condition, whether it's driving conditions, whether it's idling conditions, whether it's, hey, when I guess if you're in a cooler temperature, the ambient temperature make a difference. So like say if you're out closer towards out in the desert where it's really dry, Arizona and Midwest, things like that. Of course, the density of the air is going to be a whole lot different than it is like on the East Coast or the South. So all those different parameters play a significant part on how your vehicle operates. But with the cooling temperature operating, it's designed to operate at a certain temperature. Well, that temperature can be arranged though. It won't just say, oh, it's going to just operate at 200 degrees, or it's just going to operate at 185 degrees. That range can vary anywhere from 0 degrees from when you first start that vehicle all the way up to 216 degrees. Some of them even go up to 240 degrees. Seems like it would be on the higher side, but that's how it's calibrated. So it has this whole big window of where it can actually perform how it needs to perform. Most of this is due to emissions. Your vehicle is made different now than older vehicles, and so a lot of times the manufacturers, they'll try to give the customer indicators to where they can actually see the temperatures, see the oil pressures and things like that. But on a lot of these newer vehicles, they don't even have gauges anymore. Everything is digital, and so it just goes through like this eQuizer through the ECM was calibrated. So instead of you actually getting a gauge that's going to go back and forth, sometimes you may just get a light. There used to be like where you have a low oil pressure gauge, so you can see your oil pressure if it's in the middle, if it's low, or if it's high. But on some of these vehicles now, you just have a light, and if you have low oil, it'll say, hey, you got low oil. Like, how low is it? I don't know. We just know it's not within the calibration, so you got low oil. So with the cooling system, that's kind of how it works too. And the only thing that I can say is because I did contact the dealer on a specific one that I had. It was a good customer of mine. He's got a 98 Chevy Corvette, and they couldn't even give me a printout or like a chart that says this vehicle should be running at this temperature. I had to go dig through a lot of forums that Chevy Corvette owners that have owned these vehicles, from like day one all the way up until, and they know more about the vehicle than, you know, people who just buy them because they've been driving them all the time. They've had different issues, or they've had different concerns that they've addressed or they've seen, but it's like, hey, that's just how it is. And so sometimes it's hard for me to give just a direct answer, because a lot of times there's not a direct answer. And you can try to Google as much stuff, but then you get entitled to everybody's opinion, and it's like, well, what is really the truth? Well, what's really the truth is that they operate in a wide variety of ranges. And as long as your vehicle is operating like it's supposed to, according to, you know, how the system is operating, then there's really no problem. Usually it'll tell you, hey, there's a problem, like it'll throw a check engine light on, or your gauge, it may not stay stable. A lot of times you have problems with your cooling system, the gauge may fluctuate back and forth. It could indicate poor circulation or a leak in the system or low coolant level. But as long as your gauge is kind of, you know, is rising up to where it is when your vehicle's operating, it's kind of staying there, you know, in that, you know, that mid mark, then it's probably okay. Sometimes in, you know, stop and go traffic, or in hotter temperatures, it may go up, you know, maybe another 5 to 10 degrees, but as long as it's stable, then usually it's okay. If it gets to where it's not stable and it's going way past the mark, then usually, you know, if the vehicle's designed that way, the ECM or the computer will let it know, hey, I got a problem, and it'll actually set a fault code, because it kind of knows where the gauge needs to be depending on the driving conditions. So anyway, I don't want to get too deep into it, but it was just a concern that came from one of my customers, and I wanted to address it on the YouTube page. So if anybody else was having any concerns or misunderstanding about how to read some of the gauges, and a lot of that stuff is in the owner's menu. You can actually read through there, and it will tell you kind of the basic operation, but sometimes it may not tell you a specific like number. If you're looking for that, it may not say a specific number, or it may not give you a specific, you know, date or time, but it just may have, hey, if it's operating within these parameters, then everything is okay. Cool. Well, hope you like this video. Don't forget to hit that smash that like button, subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, and also like us on Facebook. Peace.